the puzzle is becoming ever more complete. Each week as we get more spoilers, we get to find out how exactly Legends of the Force is going to impact not just the competitive meta, but every other format that exists within Star Wars Unlimited, even its own limited format of sealed and draft for Legends of the Force. The Shroud of the Dark Side still is upon us, but we get closer to breaking that veil and being able to say, hey, this set's a good set, or hey, this set's not a good set. HARK! We are here with more preview coverage for Star Wars Unlimited. We've got 2 leaders, we've got a bunch of stuff, we have a couple of art assets to check out of things we haven't seen before and stuff we can speculate about. Anyway, let's get started with our first leader. We have another retread leader in multiple ways that we're going to check out right here. It's a common, so it's one you're going to see a lot of in Limited. It's a character we've seen before, but a different version of him that not everybody likes. But it's also an effect we've seen before, and all of that ties up to... We have Grand Inquisitor. Stories travel quickly. This is our Obi-Wan Kenobi version of Grand Inquisitor, which... still to this day, not sure why they couldn't just take the Powin from episode 3 and model that onto the Grand Inquisitor. But, you know, Lucasfilm made the decision. I love Obi-Wan Kenobi as a series. This is not a take on how bad that series is. I thought it was very good. This is one of the decisions that they made that was very poor. Anyway, game-wise, this is a cunning, villainy, Force Imperial Inquisitor leader. Action, exhaust the leader, use the Force, attack with a friendly unit. This defender gets -2, -0 for this attack. As an epic action on 5, you can flip into a 3/5, which comes into play as shielded, and then also on attack, no force required, the defender gets -2, -0 for this attack. So we are Jyn Erso with a slightly stronger ability, but more cost, and then a lower profile earlier. Something ain't meshing here. This ain't it, Chief. This Grand Inquisitor is designed to allow your units to be able to attack into other units and not take as much damage back. We've seen this effect with Disarm, with Jedha, with the Smugglers, Shuttle, Starfighter, whatever it was from set 2. There's a lot of different effects that we've seen that work with this, or similar to this. But the cost of what is required for the Grand Inquisitor's ability to do this is very high. Having to basically exhaust him and use the Force, so you have to set up getting the Force to do so. And then on this other side, having his stats be so low, this is going to be one of those leaders that requires you to be able to actually have a upgrade equipped to him in order for him to be able to do much. You do have shielded, so that's one thing. It's going to protect him from damage, so he can't be force choked out immediately. But there's still a bunch of other stuff that can take him down, including takedown. The flat on attack, the defender gets -2, -0 for this attack, is okay. He's still going to be killed by a lot of different things, so you do need to buff him, but that shield is going to at least protect you from some of the damage that you would take otherwise. I don't think this is a good leader. I don't think it's the worst leader in the game. We've already seen that before, even in this set. But this is something that's requiring a synergy we haven't seen yet, and it's possible that we may never see. Maybe the Inquisitor has a saber that's coming out that's going to buff him up and give you an ability based upon units having 0 power, but I'm not entirely sure if that's something that's going to happen. However, this leader is here. We have a couple of other things that tie a little bit into this in 2 different colors. So by way of Saga, link in the description below, we're starting off with Crushing Blow. This is a 3-cost Vigilance tactic event. Defeat a non-leader unit that costs 2 or less. This is a common number 77 out of 264 in LOF. First of all, love the big choppy Dark Trooper. I think that's pretty cool. This is based upon a Star Wars Legion miniature, which is pretty cool, because I don't think we ever saw these in Fallen Order or Survivor wielding this weapon. I think the weapon is specifically exclusive to Legion. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments below. This is a very interesting event because it allows you to defeat basically any unit that drops on 2 for 3. So it's a weaker Power of the Dark Side, but you get to choose what gets defeated, which is still decent. This is something that if your opponent drops something on 2 and then you go, cool, I'll do this thing, or I'll just take the initiative and then Crushing Blow your thing, that's pretty cool. If you have something that does have a lot of upgrades onto it that can't be defeated because it's got shields or whatever, Crushing Blow can take that out because it costs 2. So this is a decent enough piece of removal. There are a lot of 2-cost units that are coming in this set. So for specifically limited draft and sealed, this is actually a very good card because you're going to be able to pull these. They are commons, and you're going to be seeing a lot of 2-cost or less units. This also defeats any of your X-Wing, TIE Fighter, Clone Trooper, and Battle Droid tokens, but it It's something that probably will be a sideboard card if you're going to go up against something that has a lot of low to the ground stuff. I think Kylo Ren is actually going to raise in popularity a little bit because of some of the stuff that we've seen, especially Marin, which this can't defeat Marin, but there are going to be other things that are going to require you to run a lot of low cost units, so that way you can blow those things up. And because it's just a non-leader unit, doesn't say ground or space, you could take out things like Kylo's TIE Silencer. You could take out the Mercenary Gunship, A-Wings, all kinds of interesting stuff that's associated with being 2 cost or less. Is it a bad card? Not at all. Is it a card that's going to see a lot of play? Probably not. Sideboard tech at most. But the other card I'm super excited about is Purge Trooper. This is a 3-cost aggression villainy ground unit, 4 power, 2 health, Imperial Trooper traits. When played, you may deal 2 damage to a force unit. This is a common number 133 out of 264 in LOF. We've seen the Purge Troopers in Fallen Order. These guys can be pretty tough to fight, especially if you don't know exactly what you're doing against them, but they're super fun. They are Imperial Troopers, so they synergize with both Imperial strategies and Trooper strategies. It's a 3-cost, 4 power unit, so that's very good in Kylo because you want those things that can come out on turn 2 and turn 3, your 3 resource, your 4 resource, whatever you want to say, that's going to be able to help you push those points against your opponent who might not necessarily be ready for what this happens. The when played is not going to be as relevant because we are getting a lot more force units, but this isn't really going to kill anything, but it can potentially set something up to be able to be defeated by something else you're doing. If you're running something, for the example of any red leader or any leader and Tarkin Town, your opponent plays a force unit, you can play the Purge Trooper and then finish it off with Tarkin Town. So more ways of utilizing that until that rotates out. But even still, dealing 2 damage for a force unit can take some of those high cost force units into range to be ambushed by something you have or killed by something you already have on the board. Super excited for this card. It's going to be very fun, very powerful in limited because there are going to be a lot of force units. So this thing's going to be damaging a lot of stuff, even if it isn't necessarily going to kill all of those things. So love the card, love the art, love everything about it. Should be fun to see some play in the future. Next up, we have a batch of previews that do link together, plus some extra creator previews. So I'll talk about those when we get to it. But the first card we're going to talk about in this is going to be a major villain in a major arc of Star Wars. You may not know who this character is, and if you don't, that's because you're not reading the High Republic books or interacting with any of the High Republic stuff outside of Jedi Survivor, because the Nihil are just mentioned, not anything else beyond that. So let's take a look at the Eye of the Nihil. This is Marauder Row, a 6-cost cunning villainy ground unit, Eye of the Nihil, 6 power, 7 health, underworld and Nihil traits. The big thing here is each friendly unit's raid is doubled. This is a legendary number 186 out of 264 in LOF. Whoa. Doubling raid doesn't seem like it's a big issue, but once this guy gets onto the board, he has to be killed, otherwise the damage is going to rack up. Think of every card you use in villainy or neutral that has raid, and it's twice as much. Sure, this would make an A-Wing better, but that would require you to mix aspects to be able to do that. But there's plenty of cards that exist now that are going to be useful by this, and some other stuff we're going to talk about here that has already been previewed and was previewed in the last week that takes advantage of this very heavily. The major, most important piece of this card is this Underworld trait. It means that anything that synergizes with Underworld synergizes with this. So, Cad Bane? I didn't expect Cad Bane to get a huge boost this set, but we're getting more than just Marauder Row in order to be able to boost this strategy for Cad Bane in Underworld. This is a fantastic card. This is probably going to be a high chase legendary because people are going to want this to work. This is a very solid strategy of doubling your things, or at least putting something on the board that your opponent has to remove. Otherwise, you're going to run away with the game, to be able to allow you to run away with the game at a different angle if that's your plan. At a 6 cost, you can play him, flip your leader, attack, do whatever's necessary, and get that double raid based upon whichever leader you're using. Cad Bane famously has raid 2 with a 2/8 body, so he's attacking for 4, but then with this, he's attacking for 6, which is incredible. Last week, not the week of the process for this, but the week before that, we had this Strike Ship, which is a 2-cost aggression villainy space unit, 0 power, 3 health, underworld vehicle fighter Nihil, raid 3, so raid 6, and Overwhelm, which is another big thing. It's a common number 131 out of 264 in LOF. I didn't think anything of it, honestly, because a 2-cost 3/3 in space only on attack is very similar to to the Green Squadron A-Wing, except this does no damage back. And the reason why it does no damage back is because it has the Overwhelm. So you traded the 1 power to be able to get the Overwhelm and do some interesting stuff. But obviously there was a synergy in mind. Marauder Row goes, no, that's not raid 3, that's raid 6. For a 2-cost unit, yes, it requires 8 cost total worth of cards to get accomplished, but that is a huge swing that you can slam this into one of your opponent's units and still take it out, because 6 power in space is pretty big, unless you're going up against capital ships, and still be able to deal some damage to your opponent's base. Beyond that, coming by way of the Force Unlimited, link in the description below to their video, we have Aura Sing, Patient and Deadly. This is a 2-cost Cunning Villainy ground unit, 1 power, 4 health, Underworld Bounty Hunter, hidden, so it can't be attacked the phase it was played, raid 2, so it's a 3/4 on attack, an uncommon, number 179 out of 264 in LOF. So with Marauder Row out, it's now a 5/4 for 2 cost. And hidden the phase it comes out. That's pretty significant. You're going to be able to do a lot of work with cards like Aura Sing and Marauder Row together. But even if we didn't have Marauder Row, this card is the new premier 2-drop for Underworld decks, because it's going to be pushing out more damage than what your opponent is really going to be able to take. And then also because she has 4 health, it's less easy to defeat onto resources. Obviously, Quinlan Tarkin Town is going to be able to wipe this out every time, 100 times out of 100, because hidden doesn't protect it. But if you can work around that, or you're not playing against Quinlan, it's going to be very difficult to defeat this, except if we use Crushing Blow, which we've seen before. So maybe players start packing Crushing Blows because they know we're going to see things like Aura Sing and Adia Galia, and a card we'll talk about later, and Yaddle, and other 2-cost HK-47 that are overstated for this set, and going to be the carrying force moving forward until set 5 rotates out of the format in 2 years. The other card from the Force Unlimited is Rengear Spawn. This is a 4-cost Command of Villainy ground unit, 3 power, 3 health creature. Trait, Overwhelm. When this unit attacks and defeats a unit, give a number of experience tokens to this unit equal to the defeated unit's cost. It's a rare number 86 out of 264 in LOF. This doesn't mix with Marauder Row, but it was part of the Force Unlimited's previews. It's a really good card. It's not something that's going to be super great in everything that it does, but if you can get this to kill something pretty hefty, you can give it a bunch of experience tokens, and now it's just going to keep building and building and building. So you can start by eating something small, or give it a shield and eat something medium, and then keep growing to be able to get that experience, or use something like Shoot First that allows you to deal the damage before your opponent deals damage back. And then even if you don't overwhelm that first attack, you're going to be gaining resources back, experience back, to be able to make this thing bigger and bigger. Love this card. It's really cool. Is it going to be competitive? Who knows? This is one of those cards where we kind of need to see it and play to see its value. But if you draft this, whew, you got yourself big chunk. From Puente 3, link in the description below, we have 2 previews here. Our first one is Nihill Marauder. This is a 3-cost Cunning Villainy ground unit, 1 power, 5 health, Underworld Trooper Nihil, raid 3, so raid 6 of Marauder Row, a common number 182 out of 264 in LOF. You're going to look at this and think draft fodder at first, but I think even at 3 cost, a 1/5 has a bigger body on the ground. Not that normal 3 costs, because we have a lot of 3 costs that do have 5 health, but its attack of 4 means it's going to be able to push out a lot of damage. Marauder Row doubling it to 6, now you're looking at a 7/5 that's on attack when you can get that together. The combo potential for stuff like this, it's not unlimited, but it's a lot. And I think that these cards are going to see a lot of play, especially because they are in the yellow aspect. And as we all know, yellow needed a ton of help to become more viable because it hasn't completely haunted the meta of the game since set 1. So obviously sarcasm. Next we have Nameless Terror, 3-cost Vigilance Villainy ground unit, 3 power, 3 health creature trait. When played, you may exhaust a force unit. On attack, each enemy force unit loses the force trait for this phase. So you play the Nameless Terror, it goes to hunt down one of the force units and exhaust it for the round. And then when this thing is able to attack, any of your opponent's force units that have that trait no longer have that trait, which means you can't benefit with any of the things that require you to do the force, such as a common base saying attack with a force unit, gain the force. Can't do that anymore. You can't combine yourself with force choke, force lightning, force throw, any of that other stuff. So Nameless Terror might end up being a very interesting sideboard tech tool against force decks for blue decks, blue villain decks, because of course, again, blue villain needs the help. Haha. This is still an interesting enough card that I think it's going to be cool. It's an uncommon, so you're going to be able to see in draft and sealed in some form or fashion. Maybe not as much as some of the other cards we talked about, but still a pretty good card. Barian Row, I wasn't thinking about building a Cad Bane deck before the announcement of this card, but with this and some of the other stuff we've seen, Cad Red could be pretty nasty. We've got a couple of random previews. We're going to talk a little bit about two of them specifically. That is a couple that, before we get into the next leader, that have some interesting impact. We have here the Legacy Run Doomed Debris, the very beginning of the High Republic arc. If you haven't read The Light of the Jedi, which is the first book in the High Republic series, I highly recommend it because it is a very fun book, and it also gives a lot of basis for some of the things that we're seeing in this set specifically. And the Legacy Run starts it all off. The story about this ship, absolutely incredible. I'm not going to spoil it for you. Go read it yourself. 5 cost, cunning space unit, 3 power, 3 health, Republic, vehicle, and transport. When defeated, deal 6 damage divided as you choose among enemy units. This is a legendary number 213, 264, an LOF. Funky, fancy little ship. It's probably not going to kill anything by itself. And your opponent's definitely not going to want to defeat it. They're going to want to bounce it or exhaust it or whatever the case may be. But if you can get this down, either ambushing it with something like Timely Intervention or ECL, slam it into something in space that you can, deal 3 damage to that, and then deal 6 damage after that, you're dealing a total of 9 damage spread across more than one unit, or one, because it does say any unit, so if you want to pump 9 damage into one specific space unit, you totally can. But it does allow you to choose any enemy units, not just in the space arena. So it's pretty cool. Super combo potential is play this with your 4 resources total, 2 for sneak attack, then 2 for this because it reduces the cost by 3. You get to attack this into something, whether it's your opponent's base or one of your opponent's ships, and then at the end of the phase, it gets defeated, and you deal the 6 damage divided as you choose among enemy units. Great combo potential here. Don't know if this will see a lot of play. Boba 4 from JTL should absolutely be playing this as a new target because it's a 5 cost, so it fits a slot that doesn't already have a lot of 5 costs in it, and because it is a fantastic sneak attack target, much like the Ruthless Raider is, more options is going to be good, so this potentially could push that deck into more meta territory than it potentially is right now. I love this card. I love the idea. Very thematic, very cool, lots of fun stuff. I didn't actually imagine it looking like this specifically while reading the book, but I do like the concept of what this looks like. So it also makes a lot of sense with these little container canisters on the outside, which there are people in those. Next up, we have Gungji finding himself. 2 cost, command heroism, ground unit, 2 power, 5 health, Force Jedi, and Wookiee traits. No text. Got his little Force icon to let you know that he is a Force unit. An uncommon, number 83 out of 264, an LOF. I forgot how many cards were in the set, which is surprising since I've been saying the number of cards of the set for like 5 weeks now. Gungji, Wookiee, punch you in the face. He's got a big body, medium-ish attack, obviously. We would love to see 3, but it's 2 because he's got 5 health, no text. He's just a big body that survives not everything, but most things. He definitely survives Quinlan Tarkin Town, because Quinlan can only do 1 damage, but he does not survive Daring Raid Tarkin Town, unfortunately. Gungji here, you play your Gungji, 2/5, cool stuff. On your next round, you throw a General's Blade on him. Now, all of a sudden, he's a 5/8 on 3. And if you have a 2 cost unit in your hand that you can play, you can attack with your Gungji if he survives, which he probably will. Get that General's Blade cost reduction. Your next card costs 2 less. Boom, plop it down. Now you've just played 5 resources worth of stuff on turn 2, and that's pretty good. Do not be surprised if most decks from this set start as a green heroism deck. Gungji, Blade, rest of stuff. This is a very good card. This is going to see a lot of play, and I mean, there's going to be some decks that are going to have to figure out how to beat a Gungji Blade on turn 2 immediately. Even if that's just bamboozling him, exhausting him, trying to power the dark side him. There's a lot of options and answers. You could choke him the turn he comes out if you choose not to play any units, as long as you haven't played a unit already, or you take the initiative and choke him on the next turn. Your opponent gets to draw a card. There are ways to beat him, but if you don't, a 5/8 swinging with a lightsaber is going to be very, very tough to defeat, and that's pretty darn cool. Our next leader is our first representative in leaders for the High Republic. It's a Jedi we've seen before on a card. She is quite good. She also has a very strange and interesting way of being deployed, but there's a lot of fun that could be had here. Let's check out Avar Kriss, Marshal of Starlight, the Starlight Beacon specifically. This is our Command Heroism Force Jedi Republic rare leader. As an action, you exhaust Avar Kriss, the Force is with you. As an epic action, if the number of resources you control plus the number of times you've used the Force this phase is 9 or more, deploy this leader. This is deploys into a 4/10 on 9, which is pretty beefy. While the Force is with you, this unit gains +4/+0 and gains Overwhelm. So now she's an 8/10 and overwhelms into one of your opponent's units to be able to deal that extra damage. Avar Kriss is going to be the premier Force deck because she can provide you the Force without having to use the base. However, if you use the base, you can potentially end up gaining and using the Force more than once per turn. You can use Avar Kriss to gain the Force, use a Force thing for deployment or for an attack, and then with your Force attack base type thing or whatever base you choose to use, you can get that back and use it again. And you are going to want to try to see if you can get her down on 6 by using the Force 3 times that phase, which is going to be tough. So likely you're probably going to be getting her down on 7 anyway by using the Force twice. But you have a lot of options available to you in green and yellow to be able to gain and utilize the Force. This is a very interesting style leader. It's kind of obnoxious in its epic action deploy, but I think it's really neat because it does provide you with the ability to get her out before most people would potentially be ready, and your opponent has to think, okay, how's this going to be done? But it also almost always means that Avar Kriss is going to come out as one of the last things you do in a round. So your opponent's going to try to be prepared for that, right? Easy stuff though. Gaining the Force is going to be super easy. You use her ability to gain the Force once. You use the ability on something else to gain the Force twice. You probably want to try to find a reliable third way to gain and use the Force in the same round. So that way, like I said, you can drop her on 6, but expect for her to drop on 7 most games. I love it. I think it's fantastic. It's definitely, we have a lot of problems with leaders that cost 7 or more unless their name is Darth Vader. But her being a 4/10, potentially on 7, coming out as an 8/10, with Overwhelm, if you have the ability to get the Force again after you flip her, is pretty incredible. And 10 health means she's not going to be taken down by one source of something unless it's the Devastator going, you know what? Bang. Interesting stuff. Love it. I like this card a lot. Ideas are brewing in my head. Next up, we have 2 previews from Kymberlean, I believe is how it's how it's pronounced. My apologies if I got that wrong. Link in the description below to the Instagram post for these 2. Unfortunately, the artists, rarities, and set numbers are not available on these previews as we've seen them. So we're just going raw as it is with what we've seen. But we got 2 cards here from Legend of the Force that I'm assuming both are at least common rarity. So our first unit is the Jedi Temple cards. 4-cost command ground unit, 2 power, 4 health, Force and Jedi traits, ambush, restore 2. So we know modded cohort as a command heroism card has 2 power, 4 health, ambush, and raid 2. The reason why that's a good card compared to Jedi Temple guards is that it's attacking for 4 and can at least remove a piece off the board that's the same cost or at most 1 less. It obviously clears most things that are actually all things that are 2 cost or less, unless it's got 5 health, like Grogu. But Temple Guards here is only ambushing for 2. It is restoring 2, so it could be a 2 damage plus 2 health swing, depending on what you're ambushing into. But ultimately, these guys are not really going to be taking anything down. I do love the art of this card. It's very reminiscent of the episode of Star Wars Rebels that these appeared in. I think they may have also appeared in Clone Wars, but I don't remember specifically. But I do distinctly remember the scene where Kanan has to train against these guys and become a Jedi Knight once he's blinded. And one of them happens to be the spirit of the Grand Inquisitor. So really cool design here for the art, not necessarily so much for the card itself. Super disappointing, but as a common, it could have some viability in limited. Next up, we have the Jedi Vector, which is a 2-cost heroism space unit, 1 power, 3 health, Jedi vehicle fighter traits. This unit gets +1/+0 if you control another Jedi unit, and +1/+0 if you control a lightsaber upgrade. So the cool thing about Jedi Vectors is that in the High Republic, they are Force-attuned vehicles that Jedi's pilot with the Force and also stick their lightsaber into the steering column, so they have the ability to control them very easily with the Force rather than having to focus on the whole steering column. They just focus on the lightsaber, which they're already focusing on as a highly trained Jedi, right? So the idea behind this is that you have the Vector, you have a Jedi out, and you have a lightsaber on that other Jedi, meaning that this thing's going to get its full power. The main problem is that this second part here is kind of a thematic clash where the Vector itself should be able to equip the lightsaber. I understand that that means it would be getting stat bonuses and effects that it probably shouldn't. Who cares? But the Jedi Vector does require 2 other cards in order to be able to be fully viable. You could potentially have 2 of these on the board, giving them both 2/3, but you would still need a 3rd card that has a lightsaber on it in order to be able to get that full 3/3 for 2. So in limited, in draft, in sealed, this could see some viability, but in terms of playability in a regular deck, this ain't it, unfortunately. So they are what they are. I love the art on this. I am very disappointed in the the half theme of the Jedi Vector, but its viability, much like some other cards that do require other things to be successful, Kit Fisto, they're just not really going to see a whole lot of play. And the more of these you have, technically, the better it's going to be. But ultimately, even 3 of these with other Jedi floating around and other lightsabers floating around require too much investment to just be a 2-cost 3/3 in space, which we've seen other things do very easily with very little downside. Next up, we have 2 previews courtesy of Neverboard Gaming. Link to their Instagram post in the description below. We got a unit, we've got an event. Let's start with the unit. We have Priestesses of the Force, Eternal. 7-cost Vigilance ground unit, 6 power, 8 health, Force trait. When played, you may use the Force. If you do, give a shield token to each of up to 5 units. This is an uncommon, number 72 out of 264 in LOF. It is cool. Thematically, you are up to 5 units, depicting the 5 units on the card, 5 characters on the card, so that's pretty cool. You are able to give the shield to itself because it is in play when played, which is fantastic, so you're going to at least do 1. Unfortunately, given the way that strategies work in the game nowadays, between attacking units, between bumping them back to hand, defeating them, or just straight damaging them with events, you're likely not going to have 5 units on the board to be able to have all of your stuff be shielded. But there is an interesting combo here with Doom and with Satine Kriss that allows you to get those extra health and keep them protected with the shields when you play Priestesses. And because the Priestesses have 8 health, they're also discarding extra cards based upon Satine, and you can do the mill strategy adding this in, especially if you're running double blue and you're running the blue common Force base with a lot of Force units, of which the Priestesses are. It's an interesting combo line. Doom for experience tokens, Priestesses for shield tokens, but I still don't really think it has any viability, especially given the issues that I have with Doom and the design of that card. Let's, speaking of using the Force, let's move over to Sorceress Blast. This is a 1-cost aggression Force event. Use the Force. If you do, deal 3 damage to a unit. This is a common, number 172 out of 264 in LOF. Daring Raid has some competition. It's called Sorceress Blast. Yes, there's an extra cost of using the Force, but with this set, at least, getting the Force is not going to be all that difficult, especially if you're using bases that just give it to you, or you have a leader that just gives it to you. Obviously, you know who I'm talking about. Sorceress Blast is going to be something that's very good because it also deals damage to a unit. It doesn't deal damage to a base, unfortunately, but it deals damage to any unit, unlike McClunky, which this is a similar effect to, which can only deal damage to a ground unit. So Sorceress Blast is going to give you a lot of viability, versatility to be able to use that Force token to potentially eliminate a unit off the board or soften it up for something else that you're going to want to be doing. And the best part about this, it's not villainy, which means heroism can use this, and basically anything that uses aggression can use this, so long as they can generate Force tokens, which we know generating Force tokens at least is fairly easy if only you can do it once or twice a turn. Still a pretty good card. I think one of the better common events we've seen so far. However, FFG gave us another preview, and this is Rengear Row, a 3-cost Cunning Heroism ground unit, 3 power, 4 health, Force Jedi traits. When played, you may use the Force. If you do, ready this unit. This is a rare, number 195 out of 264 in LOF. Precocious Knight. This is the younger version of Rengear Row from the beginning of the High Republic series, not the older version of her that we saw in the Acolyte. Still has the whippy-wappy lightsaber whip, which is very unwieldy and does not make any sense as a weapon, but it's pretty darn cool. Vernestra is the new premier 3-drop as long as you're using the Force, because can generate the Force because you ready it into a 3/4 without any penalties other than having to use the Force. So Avar Kriss gets a lot of use out of this because Avar can just say, cool, I'll generate the Force, then I'll deploy Vernestra and hit you with this to be able for using the Force that I just generated. But even if you're not using Avar Kriss, you have any of those common bases that can allow you to attack with the Force unit to gain the Force. So your turn 1 play 2-cost Force units at the beginning of your turn 2, attack, get the Force, play Vernestra, spend the Force, attack with Vernestra, boom, 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 boom. You're putting out more damage than what your opponent's potentially ready for. I would normally say being forced into green-yellow with cards like this with Avar Kriss is bad, except being forced into yellow is never a bad thing because, as we all know, it's the best color / aspect in the game. I like this card a lot. I think it's very good. 3/4 stats is pretty average for what we know of a unique ground unit in the 3 slot, but the fact that she can come into play ready and attack that same turn is pretty baller. Our last batch of previews that we'll be covering this week comes by way of a design article from FFG over on the Star Wars Unlimited website, link in the description below. John Leo talking about a bunch of fun stuff in Legends of the Force. There were a bunch of cards added in here, but we're going to go through 4 specific ones because I think they're the most relevant out of what we've seen. So we're going to jump right into Lothwolf. I love this. 2-cost Vigilance Heroism ground unit, 3 power, 3 health, creature trait, Sentinel keyword, this unit can't attack, number 44 out of 264, a common in LOF. This is exactly what Kanan wanted to really fulfill itself as a deck type and archetype in this set. Having access to some of the other 2 costs that we have is okay. There's the 1/4/1 with hidden that's an aggression that's going to be pretty good for that deck. The Lothwolf is basically your static. This is going to protect my board for a couple of turns, and my opponent's going to really have to try to deal with it. The fact that you can play this on your turn 2 with 3 resources and throw a shield on it immediately in the next action that you're able to take, it's a shielded Sentinel that you can continuously put a shield onto. Ezra can come out, attack, give it an experience token. If you're playing double blue, you can have Doom, and then Doom's going to give this thing an extra experience token as well. There's a lot of fun stuff on, and then hopefully it will survive long enough to be able to make it so that you have your creature or specter on your Kanan flip turn, and then Kanan can do some massive damage there. The fact that it can't attack, I don't think is a downside. Yeah, you lose a 3 power unit that you're playing for 2 resources, but the fact that it's a 3 power unit with Sentinel that you can drop on 2 if you want, take the initiative and put a shield on it as your first action next turn, you're gonna give your opponent some troubles. As it is, Village Protectors is already a pretty decent Sentinel that sticks on the board with the shield, but this becomes out with the 3/3 body and power that your opponent has to attack into, or at least try to bounce it back to your hand, and you're using resources at that point on a 2-cost creature, right? Very good card. I think it will see a lot of play in blue decks that want to be able to make sure they have some Sentinels on the board, and this is going to be in basically every Kanan Jarrus deck. Next, we have Jedi Starfighter, 2-cost aggression heroism space unit, 1 power, 4 health, Jedi Republic vehicle fighter traits. On attack, you may deal 1 damage to a space unit. It's a common, number 144 out of 264 in LOF. It's obviously Kit Fisto support, but we're not going to worry about that. What this does is actually gives you a very nice vehicle play with Luke Skywalker from set 4, because it's a fighter. You can play it on 2. When you attack, you can deal damage, and then you can deal another damage to that unit utilizing Luke's ability thereafter because you've attacked the fighter. Sure, it's only got 1 power, but it has 4 health, so it's going to survive a lot of space units that are dropped on 2 and 3. And honestly, at this point, this unit is a little pushed considering what we've seen in the 2-cost era for fighters in space. So, but this is going to be, again, every Luke 4 deck's going to be running 3 of these because it's a fighter, does exactly what you want, and it deals damage to space units on the attack. Next, we have a card that is an uncommon. This is Mace Windu, leaping into action, an uncommon 6-cost aggression heroism ground unit, 6 power, 6 health, Force Jedi Republic traits, fantastic. Overwhelm, oh boy. When played, you may use the Force if you do deal 4 damage to a unit. This is an uncommon, number 149 out of 264 in LOF. It's Wrecker, but the Jedi Wrecker, effectively. Because it is a 6, it'll come out with ECL. You'll have to use other things, or you can just play it, do the damage, and on your next turn attack into something, so that way you could do other things with your other units and not have to worry about running early game epic action base that everybody is trying to run with green, although Data Vault. This card is busted. It's an uncommon. This card is an absolute bomb in limited. There's going to be very few things that can take this off the board, and because you're using the force with everything that you do, you're going to be able to do that 4 damage to any unit, not a ground unit, any unit. So theoretically, you can damage a space unit, attack into a ground unit, take out 2 units at once if you're ambushing it in, or whatever the case may be. Two things at 2 turns, whatever. But this Mace Windu being able to have that 6 power and 6 health on 6 with Overwhelm and Irrelevant when played, this card is nuts. However, not as nuts as Darth Vader, Twilight of the Apprentice. This is a 6 cost, stop with the 6 costs, Vigilance, Villainy, ground unit, 5 power, 6 health, Force, Imperial, and Sith traits. When played, give a shield token to a friendly unit and to an enemy unit. On attack, defeat an enemy unit with a shield token on it. This is a legendary, number 37 out of 264 in LOF. Once again, Darth Vader becomes the most valuable legendary in a set. This card is insane. Blue-green villain did not need the help. You don't even need the force for this. This slots into every deck that runs blue and green and ECL because there's so many things you can do with this. The when played means you can give Vader the token and a token to one of your other targets. The on attack means you can defeat that other target, and then Vader himself can ambush into another thing with the 5 damage that he can put onto the board with that and not take any damage back because it's a shield. But beyond that, neither of these say non-leader. So you can give your shield token to your friendly leader and to your opponent's leader, and then on the on attack, defeat an enemy unit, not non-leader unit, just enemy unit with a shield token on it. This is a leader buster. It has to die the second it comes out, but if you're playing it before you have access to that ambush, you're trying to bait somebody else into taking it out so that way you can do something else. You're probably never going to see this not ambush in some way, shape, or form because it's just too strong to not do so. This is a playable card on 7 using Timely Intervention. This is a playable card on 6 using ECL. This is a playable card using any other way of giving it ambush. It's absolutely insane. This is a great card, the top legendary of the set, and you're going to see a lot of it, and that's probably going to be a problem. So there you have it. That's what we've got this week. Lots of fun stuff. You know, not as many great, fantastic leaders as we could have potentially have had, but we did get a lot of really cool stuff that works for decks that exist and decks that are going to exist. I think that Lothwolf is really going to change the way Kanan is going to play moving forward. Obviously, it's a new leader, so of course it's going to change because it's just going to have to solidify itself. But it's changing the way that people perceive the way that Kanan is going to be dropped. That Lothwolf is going to have some good legs. Marauder Row is going to be fantastic. I think Avar Kriss is going to be very good with the force and being able to deploy early enough to be a relevant leader in the gameplay. Again, Vader and Mace Windu's, they're having absolutely baller legendaries in this set, but even Mace Windu being an uncommon is fantastic. There's just so much good stuff coming out of this set, and there's just so much good stuff coming out of this set. It feels very different than Shadows of the Galaxy did, where this is the second set in another rotation, and they're really trying to push things out. Is the Force going to be the most viable thing in the world? Probably not, but there is going to be some way to use it and do some good stuff with it. So the other thing, Hidden, we don't know exactly how well that's going to play out. It'll be interesting, but I don't think it will be a mainstay in the competitive meta moving forward. Limited in this set should be pretty fun because there is a major theme you can focus on to rather than a bunch of random themes put out together. Space vehicles in JTL, Force units in LOF. Those are going to be the limited experiences we're definitely going to have a lot of fun with, I believe. And hopefully I can do as good in these sets of pre-releases as I did the last time. So there is an art article going over, there was an art stream and an art article going over a lot of the different things that were going on in Star Wars Unlimited. We're not going to cover all of that because we don't really have a whole lot of time. Plus I'm trying to race against time to get this ready to go for Tuesday as I'm recording this the weekend of the regional qualifier. So link in the description below to that article and that stream. Check it out for yourself. Lots of fun stuff there, including some things we have seen and some things we haven't seen. So that's it. That's all we have this week. Thank you very much for joining me, everybody. Be sure to like this video, comment down below what your favorite preview is, what your favorite leader is so far, what you're looking at on Legends of the Force, if you think Vader is busted in half or not. Anything you want to comment down below, do so. It helps out, does show YouTube that my stuff is viewed and people want to comment on things and gets those engagements going as we desperately need as creators on this platform that is built to work against us. Subscribe to this channel for all of your Star Wars Unlimited needs. Thank you very much, everyone, for your patronage. 2 days, Thursday, another video coming out. You'll want to watch it. I'll see you then. And with that, I will see you in the stars.